Well, the data has been recovered. And that's the reason why we have this huge, big breaking news story. Not only has it been recovered, it is now being analyzed by Indian investigators and also the US National Transport Safety Board. Now, this is as per legal requirements, but we now have the entire sequence of events of what has taken place. But the big story that we are presently tracking is that despite the damage which was sustained by the black boxes, the data from the black boxes of AI-171, which is the Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner, which went down in a crash just after taking off from Ahmedabad on a flight to London Gatwick. That data has now been recovered. The flight was able to fly for just about 30-35 seconds after takeoff from Ahmedabad. It crashed. It resulted in the death of more than 270 people, both on the aircraft and on the ground. But the data we now have, and it's an entire sequence of events of the recovery of those black boxes, and I'm going to go through a couple of those points so that we fully understand what's taking place. I think this government statement makes the point that all international regulations are being followed. India is a member of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and therefore the data being recovered is being done as part of a process. Now, the most significant part of what we now know is that on the evening of the 24th of June, 2025, the team led by the Director General of the Accident Investigation Board with technical members from the AAIB and the National Transportation Safety Board began the data extraction process. Something called the crash protection module from the front black box was safely retrieved. And on the 25th of June, 2025, the memory module was successfully accessed and its data was downloaded at the AAIB lab. The analysis of the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder is now underway. These efforts aim to reconstruct the sequence of events which led to the accident and identify contributing factors to enhance aviation safety and prevent future occurrences. All actions are being taken as per international norms and also domestic laws. I think the key point over here is that this is going to be followed very closely, not just in terms of Air India, which has more Dreamliners in service than any other wide-body aircraft that it presently operates, but also by international operators of the Boeing 787, because what took place on that day remains a huge mystery. How did an aircraft which has never had a crash before appear to have lost engine power, which resulted in it going down shortly after takeoff within approximately 35 seconds of the crash? Was there a rolling back of engine power? The pilot had declared a mayday, remember. If so, what caused that? Was there a massive electrical failure? Was the aircraft improperly configured? These are just a couple of questions. Was there potentially poor fuel contamination or poor fuel which resulted in fuel contamination? Was there pilot error? Was there a mix of many factors? Were there concerns about maintenance at Air India? All of these will be answered. Now, what they're trying to do is reconstruct the events based on the data that they are looking at. I think the key part of this is to understand what exactly a black box is. For starters, and we've said this repeatedly, I think it's important that we repeat this information. A black box isn't black in color. It's in fact orangish in color. It's made in that way so that it attracts attention. Now, what we do know is the dates in which the two black boxes of the aircraft were recovered. And this government statement says both the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorders were recovered. These are both collectively part of what is known as a black box unit. There are two of these units on the aircraft, one in the front of the aircraft, one behind the aircraft. There's the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder. Both of these were recovered, one from a rooftop of the building at the crash site on the 13th of June 2025. The other was recovered 3 days later from the debris itself. Standard operating procedures were followed. It was stored carefully. It was transported. It was put under 24-hour police protection with CCTV footage monitoring all of this. It was kept in Ahmedabad. Subsequently, on the 24th of June, both of these black boxes were flown by the Indian Air Force to Delhi. And the front black box, the black box located in the front of the aircraft, that arrived at 2 p.m. on the 24th of June. The one in the rear arrived at 5:15 on the 24th of June, which leads me to believe that given the sensitivity and the importance of this entire investigation, both these black boxes were flown in on separate aircraft of the Indian Air Force. And on the evening of the 24th of June, a team led by the Director General of the Aircraft Accident Investigation Board, which is India's accident investigator, along with technical members from the National Transportation Safety Board, which is the American regulator. They began the data extraction process. The crash protection module, that's a part of the black box, from the front black box, which as I understand it was more damaged, was safely retrieved, and a day later, on the 25th of June, in other words, yesterday, the memory module was successfully accessed, right? And its data was downloaded at the Accident Investigation Board lab in Delhi. This comes at a time when there was a sense that perhaps this needed to be sent out, perhaps to the US, to the United Kingdom, to Singapore, where facilities exist to actually download this data. But we've set up a lab recently in India, and this data has been downloaded at this lab. Now, what is the data? There are two elements. There's the cockpit voice recorder, which records the conversations of the pilot. And then there is the digital flight data recorder, which records 1,000+ parameters on everything on the flight. The fuel flow, the condition of the engines, whether the engines were throttling up, were they throttling down, the power to the engines, the surface of the wings, whether the flaps were deployed. Flaps are structures on the wing of an aircraft which actually influence the manner in which the aircraft flies. Very, very important. As an aircraft takes off and lands, there's one line of thought that perhaps those flaps were not were improperly configured. Some say that that's not the case. We will know one way or the other with this data. What about the cockpit instrumentation? What about the electrical harnesses on board? What about the overall electrical systems? What about what the pilots were saying? Because is that corroborating with what the data shows? Remember, the recovery of just the conversations of the pilot alone is not enough in something like this. Sometimes the pilots might be thinking that something is going wrong when in fact the data tells you something different. So what they are trying to do, and I quote, these efforts aim to reconstruct the sequence of events leading to the accident and identify contributing factors to enhance aviation safety. A final couple of points. Number one, this is critical for Air India. As I mentioned, there are tens of thousands of passengers. There are thousands of passengers at the very least who travel on Dreamliners every single day. But the Dreamliner is one of the most successful Boeing models in recent times. It is operated by dozens of airlines across the world. And therefore, if there is something systemically problematic with the Dreamliner aircraft, would this is something which therefore impacts airlines across the world? Or is it something to do with Air India and Air India alone? As I understand it, and I would stand corrected on this, given India's legal prerogative to follow the ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization norms, we are a signatory, the preliminary report has to come out within 1 month. So we've not reached that 1 month period as yet. Obviously, there is a lot of interest in this across the world. But on the basis of the fact that you've actually got data, which is a massive breakthrough, I would suggest that the preliminary report, right, which basically tells you this is what we know so far, this is what it seems to be, that would be out perhaps even in a matter of days.
Absolutely, Vishnu. Of course, that will answer all those questions that you have.
I would suggest some of those questions, Divya, because it's a preliminary report, and a final report, Divya, can actually take several months to go through. Whenever there is a crash, Divya, and sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's a point worth making. There is very often not one factor. There are many factors. For example, if there is an issue with the flight surfaces or the flap setting done by the pilot, then that goes into training. That goes into issues like fatigue. That goes into whether the fly-by-wire control system of the aircraft was working properly. Were there hydraulic issues as well? I've already named 4 or 5. There could be many more such conditions. So you need to analyze all of this, and you need to understand where exactly things started going wrong. That could take about 2-3 months, that's my guess, perhaps even longer. But the immediate cause of the crash, which gives you a basic idea of what went wrong, within 1 month, there should be that preliminary report.